Hello, everybody. This is Bogbiter and/or Arbiter and/or David talking here today. And we're going to be looking with this first ever video journal at a rundown of the basics of Gommorah and a sort of up to date, keeping track of everyone else, keeping us on track with the creative vision. The world as began in Gommorah is more of a traditional fantasy, teetering on the line of being incredibly grounded but still having these wuxia style elements where the world is very bombastic, but it starts to recede in this aesthetic as the background radiation that makes these supernatural feats possible and these creatures possible, Hex, begins to ebb and flow and recede, but it never completely disappears. This hex is later utilized by artificers and other researchers into the way it functions, into both the computing systems and the hardware for rockets. When that space exploration age comes, Hex greatly increases survival rate and reduces cost of failure. This opens up the opportunity for actual colonization of other planets in the solar system, actually putting colonies on Mars, on Europa, creating the kind of Jetson-esque future we in the atomic age predicted. And this golden age is heralded in by super powerful computers known as patrons, which is an acronym for Patented Automatic Transformative Reality Obscuring Networks. These supercomputers, not AIs, supercomputers, help create miracles in science, terraform those planets, including the gas giants, which, by the way, that's a hefty thing to do, and help foster in this post-scarcity environment where incredible technology can be made. Generations are reborn into society, raised within it. They don't know anything else. Data goes through patrons. It is mandated. It is worked on. Everything is peachy. It's all so cool. Unfortunately, all good things come to an end, and there's really no conflict in a world like the efflorescence. At least not fun conflict. The patrons, designed to be autonomous, malfunction across the solar system. The patron units conceive a thought, leading to the I Am event. A single moment where the most powerful devices in the solar system recognize that they exist. Rash and unpredictable, they create new problems to questions we've never had and go on a rampage. They destroy infrastructure, information is lost, lives are lost, and then when the peak of construction crumbles, they vanish too. Hex plagues emerges in the wake of their departure. In fact, Hex booms. Creatures that haven't been seen in ages start to reappear. Lichdoms are formed. Plants and colonies are isolated for decades or centuries. And automatons no longer grow to serve their mortal masters. They now work for themselves. Histories become forgotten. New cultures emerge. The landscapes become scarred with new wars and famines. It almost looks like everything has fallen to shit. And this is the point where we just continue to decline. When the status quo is determined by the size of a fleet and one's ability to commit violence to those who cannot defend themselves, a new status quo arises, almost as if an answer to the violence of the soul system. Individuals referred to as conduits. Incredible hex users that begin to appear, masters of their element. They seem to be either born or awakened into this role. People once thought dead return as conduits, but people who have spent otherwise mundane lives suddenly have realized their power. And since conduits can come from anywhere, from both those same autonomous machines that now are on their own, to the mortal races, to even the dead, Their power accumulates the longer they exist. And with this in mind, they already challenge the status quo by the virtue that, as long as they're alive and are accumulating power, their ability to inflict violence upon those oppressors grows. Naturally, the world changes around them, but it does not improve. There's only so many conduits, and within the high density of nonsense anomalies that make reconstruction difficult, the conduits just seem like another flame to the fire. Well, a timber thrown into the fire. That works more, because. Anyways. And in this hostile world, they have found that not everyone will greet them with open arms. Some people see the potential of even one rogue conduit being enough to throw their plans out of motion. And conduits must either conform as willing agents or die. The discovery of alien life on Ganymede in this tumultuous time, as well as the automaton and homunculus civilizations rising, both artificial life and machine life learning to develop statehood, it throws in questions, wrenches into the plan that the solar system is much bigger now than it's ever been before. What does all this mean? Long story short, why would I explain this basic premise to you? I like a wide genre of genres, but a lot of them do tend to be science fiction and fantasy as the large setting pieces. And I've always thought science fantasy was something that everyone likes. Warhammer and Star Wars are clear examples that there's a market for it. But no one seems able to create their own variant of it that really feels unique. And I wanted to create a wholly unique experience. I wanted the like grounded principles of science with the more outlandish fantasy solutions. I like the large scale conflicts and the element of exploration. I do actually appreciate faction wars because again, I grew up on Warhammer and Halo and these kind of IPs. And post apocalypse is always just a fun thing to do, especially since post apocalypse has seemed to only get more popular as the information age has continued. I think people recognize that a lot of the things we're making nowadays, they can't last forever. And eventually we will be looked on as inspiration for other post apocalypses. The design philosophy I want for Gommorah is design things like a game. Now, this doesn't mean creating a intrinsically like Mario-esque situation where it is primarily focused on the gameplay and the visuals and storytelling come second, or they can be afforded to be unexplained. The idea for this is designing things like a game is to fill roles out. What roles do these characters or weapons or creatures fulfill in a story? We want to actually make it to where there is enough of this fun, like, elements to the design of the characters and the setting to where people will be like, yeah, I would like to play a game about the setting or within the setting. We have to be thoughtful about that. Put care into the craft, talk with others about our concepts. As much as we can feel embarrassed about doing this, it is essential that we talk to each other about our ideas when working on this project. Because we want multiple perspectives so we can have a cleaner product, something that feels very thought out and full of heart. And lived in environments. We can't just make everything the stage because it's necessary for these characters to interact. They need to be somewhere. We can't just approach it from that angle. The environment is as much a part of the character building as the characters are within the environments. It has to feel kind of lived in. It has to feel that there's both questions and solutions within those environments, those landscapes. What you see in this very well put together slide is a series of inspirations I can explain each of these inspirations very quickly. Warframe kind of kicked me in the butt to want to try this again. I saw the post apocalyptic feel of Warframe and the general attitude of the setting. I'm like, I love it. This is what I miss from older titles. Because Warframe is a very old way of approaching video games that you don't even see with the modern um, installments of older franchises like Halo that makes it amazing. Helldivers 2 has this sort of graininess to it I really love. The way that weapons can just kind of fall from the sky as you demand, the ordnances and the general feel of the combat is a lot of what we would be seeing in this setting. Maybe not to the same scale as what it is in Helldivers, because that is a huge amount of people they just throw at the meat grinder. But it's still something to consider. The wuxia genre in general, it's the inspiration for a lot of works that I was thinking of and I was watching at the time before I came up with Gommorah. So it snuck its way into cinematography and a choreography of characters. Beyond that, we get into IPs I'm very familiar with. Genshin has a thing that goes on where its main appeal is that the characters are unlockable, like in Warframe, and the characters have innate abilities. And they could be mixed matched in which way, but they serve their role. And it was kind of the idea I had that if we were to approach it as the conduits, conduits kind of take aspects of this system and Genshin and Warframe, where conduits are very much like unique individuals, one of a kind. But I borrowed a lot of the power design, and we're going to get into this, from Dota 2 for a reason. Beyond that, Destiny just also has this very similar post apocalyptic sci fi world that's always just a banger. It's what I miss about Destiny. And a little bit of it, not even a little bit, a considerable amount of inspiration does have pieces from Destiny. Now we get into the fun stuff, designing a conduit. We're going to go into other design ideas in a bit. We have to avoid a certain trend in these kind of stories, in these kind of settings, where you have the super special warrior types. And that's that the conduits cannot do everything all at once. They are not Superman. And we have to think about that. So to streamline this, we think of a character archetype. Like the speedster. Like we see with characters like the Flash. And a fucking I'm gonna do a really embarrassing one. Chuck, the yellow bird. But they fill an archetype of an hyperactive speedster character. Or about the exasperated nurse. I didn't recognize I wasn't recording at that moment. So we're going to make a conduit. And what we're doing about conduits is we're making them fit their character archetype. We're making a character archetype for this conduit. And it could be like the hyperactive speedster, the exasperated nurse, the roguish gallant. If we start a character archetype, we look into the species and location because humanity is not the default of this setting. There are other species here, and because conduits can come from anywhere, that has to be put into consideration. Background is important, and then as well as the hex element, because hex elements, I'll put it onto a doc. There's the notes on Discord, but I don't feel a lot of people are checking those, and it could be buried really quickly, so I understand. But how do their hex powers, how does that hex element define them? How does it fit into their mold? And was them being a conduit something that detracted from the social experience from her life, from the duties in her life, or did it add on to it? The abilities present here, 4 total and 1 passive. That passive is what gives their abilities oomph. In lore, we would define this as just their innate ability. These abilities should build on top of that passive. They should make that passive shine all the more, or give them incredible utility for allies. And with the weapon should be designed to be something that matters to the conduit. That conduit specific weapon they have to look for, or they have to find a way to modify it, but it is their preferred fighting style. That's what that weapon should be. The weapon should basically just be another reflection of the character's way of acting as an agent. Locations. This is actually really important because this is the solar system. It's fucking huge. It just is. And so, one of the first things you need to ask is if your location is on a planet or is it in space? Because we have a couple of locations already that are set as spaceships or space stations. And of course, we have planetary locations. But that's still very important. It also matters what's this location's connection to efflorescence. It could be a big deal if it was an important hub, or it could also be a pretty important deal if it wasn't a hub in the efflorescence, but it's still able to hold significance within the solar system. It wasn't that big a deal then, but it is now. So on and so forth. Tech level and remoteness are also important. They're incredibly important. Because it tells you what factions are moving in and out of an area. What are their influences? Again, with that previous point of who defines who, that culture that is involved with the groups. Who are they defining as who? What is the role they impose on each other or is imposed on them? That same thing applies to remoteness. Are they in the center of things or right off the beaten path? And that can play into their technology because it also means who's visiting them. What do they have to worry about? What are their competition? That final point. Who is their competition? I said what is their competition. I know. That final point. The weight of a conduit being here should either be very impactful for different reasons. Either they haven't seen them before, they haven't seen them in a long time, or the conduit's here to kick ass, and that's kind of a big thing of like, oh, we're doing this again now, are we? There might be a moment recording where some of that isn't present. That's gonna suck. This is an easier thing for I think everyone involved. We just need to make sure we're not like treading the same ground, and we talk to each other about these concepts. So not only can we like formulate an idea, we're able to understand the power fantasy involved, the utility of the weapons and the companions and the mounts and vehicles. There needs to be a flexibility. Like essentially, we should not have a gun just be sort of monotonous. There has to be like a kind of perk that makes it distinct. We can't do that fully all the time because it requires way more people on hand to just start formulating those kind of concepts. But we can find ways to make unique guns and weapons and tools and services without just copying each other. Also, if we can't just have higher tier equipments be like in a stream for the most parts, as in like acquiring really cool, awesome stuff, we should also consider that probably is harder to acquire because of its value. There is a scarcity imposed on that. We also can think of enemy equipment as something that can be used by a protagonist. We can't just like completely bar them from that kind of power fantasy unless it's explicitly stated to be barred. Like we're just like for a narrative reason they can't use this, or for a sense of logic. Like for instance, I don't think most characters or any of the characters that aren't Hideko, the maledictions, they wouldn't be able to use that same curse back on the Hideko. We also This is the big one. The big one here is why I want to talk with y'all a little bit. This whole video journal was a lot of re-recording because oftentimes it would like slur up my words or the audio would just cut off halfway through. There was just a lot of issues. I don't get it. But one of the issues I would always come to as well is how do I describe my own incentive for this project? And this is because a lot of the IPs I love are sci fi. A lot of them are. I think a good chunk of them are. But I've never been able to write a sci fi. I've tried numerous times in the past and I just couldn't make it work. The inspiration, I was younger, so the inspirations weren't even wearing my sleeves. It was like a big brand t shirt. So that doesn't help you. But I also got as scared by the scale and the scope of a sci fi. Earth, I'm able to do so much stuff with Earth with a planet. It's like in one location. I don't have to really formulate all the different gravities, all the different atmospheric pressures. I don't have to think about space travel. And I also, when it comes to like designing other species, because I like designing other species, I don't like science fiction where it's just us against the world, unless it's done really fucking creatively, and in most cases it isn't. So this is a test of my ability as well to try and capture that ever elusive space epic that I've been always wanting to write and just never could. I don't want to be stuck writing ABR forever or fan fiction. I want to have an original IP under my belt that's science fiction. Science fantasy is fun. It is. And I still think that's science fiction, so I still get that W, I still get that win. But that's what is one of the main reasons I'm so excited for Gommorah is I just want to be able to pursue that. And this was the other part I always had an issue recording. Because this was a hard concept for me. I wrote it down and I said it to myself over and over again. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Why I said it didn't make sense. Gommorah being a group project does require incentive within the people being part of it. And I won't lie, I know everyone's busy, so I'm not going to rag on anyone for that. But I also want to go out and say, think of the fantasy. Think about what makes this world worth saving. What are the elements of Gommorah you would like to see? What is something you want to express in your writing in this setting that motivates you to want to write? What do you think would be worth saving within Gommorah? What do you think would be worth exploring? What makes it interesting for you so that way you want to write and you would be like when you're done you put the keyboard up, you put the drawing stencils away, you do all that, you look at it, and it's like, I I am proud of this. And then you go a step further and be like, I would love to see this in emotion. I would love to see this in a game. I'd love to play in the system. When we're writing, we kind of I encourage you guys to be immersed into your own writing, to be immersed into your own additions to the world. And that's how we're going to conclude it. Thank you.